Once upon a time, a long time ago, there was an old lady, a grandma, and she lived by herself in a small home. And she had a chair, a very comfy, cushy chair that she loved to sit in. It was her favorite place to sit. When she would get up in the morning, she would make breakfast, eat her food. She would sit in that chair to read or to rest after she had worked in her garden and do all kinds of fun stuff. Well, not a whole lot. She was old and she couldn't do a lot of fun things. But one thing she really enjoyed is when her grandkids came over, because that made her so happy, because she was by herself a lot at the time. Well, one day, her grandkids came over, and they were all outside playing except for one little grandson who loved to sit and talk to Grandma. And he had a bouncy ball that he loved. It had orange and black stripes on it. It looked like it was like the fur of a tiger. He loved that ball. He loved it especially because it had been given to him by his grandma. And he said, "Grandma, where did you get this ball that you gave me?" And the grandma said, "Oh, now that is a good story." And she said, "Why don't you come sit down and let me tell you all about it?" And so he sat down on the floor, and she sat down in her favorite chair. And she looked at her grandson and said, "Do you believe in magic?" And he wasn't sure what she meant, because most kids do believe in magic, but most kids also know that most grown-ups don't really believe in magic that much. And so he said, "Well," and then he thought and he didn't know what to say. And she said, "Oh, don't worry. Well, I want you to know something. I believe in magic. I don't mean magic tricks or, magic that most grown-ups talk about. I mean real magic." Lay down. Anyway, I want to tell you about real magic. And the little boy said, "Well, Grandma, what does this have to do with my ball?" And she said, "It has everything to do with the ball. I'm going to tell you where it came from." She said, "When I was a little girl, there was a very special place that I used to go to. It was a place with a swimming pool and water slides." And the boy said, "Like a water park?" And she said, "Yes. I believe it's a little bigger than it used to be." And the little boy said, "You mean the water park is still around?" He was surprised because he knew his grandma was really old, so he figured that anything she went to when she was a little girl couldn't possibly be around anymore. She said, "Oh, yes, it's definitely still around. And it's still a wonderful place. It's a magic water park. It had wonderful slides, and one of the great things is you could run." And the little boy said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "It's a water park, but you can still run there because it's magic. And you can run there and not have to worry about slipping and getting yourself hurt." And then he knew what she meant, because he'd been to the swimming pool lots of times, and lifeguards are always telling you not to run. And she went on, "When I was there once as a little girl, I went to a place there and got some pie. They have wonderful pie there. A magic pie, I'm pretty sure. The magic pie came from another magic place, but that's a story for another day. And it was wonderful. And they had these wonderful games to play. And one day I was there with my brother. We both went together. And we played a game. And I won that ball that you're holding right now. It was very special because the game that I played was actually a race riding on the back of a tiger. The little boy raised his eyebrows and looked at her and said, "Really, Grandma?" You see, he had been believing her so far, but now he was like, I'm not sure I believe that. And she said, "Oh, trust me, it's quite true. In the Magic Water Park, you can do all kinds of things. I believe you can ride alligators, swim with sharks. Actually, a lot of these things have happened since I went there. You see, adults don't go anymore, aren't able to go to these magic places. These are just for kids. So I haven't been in a long time. But you know, that place is still there. And I know, you know how I know that it's still there? And that lots of things have changed about it?" The little boy said, "How?" And she looked and said, "Because your dad used to go there when he was a little boy. And he would come home and tell me about it. And you know what?" The little boy said, "What?" She said, "I think that you should go to the Magic Water Park." And he said, "How? How do I get there?" All of a sudden, he was starting to believe that she wasn't just making this up. He started to feel something kind of like magic, and felt like there was magic right there in the room with them. And she said, "Well, one way to get there, the way most people get there, is as you're walking around, you look for puddles on the ground. But not just any puddles, but puddles in places where it makes no sense for there to be a puddle. A puddle suddenly on a dry, hot day on the middle of the sidewalk where there shouldn't be any water, or it should have dried up. Or just a puddle somewhere in the middle of a park on the grass where a puddle shouldn't be able to be." The little boy said, "What do you do when you see one of those puddles?" And she smiled. And she said, "You jump in. And when you do, you'll get to the park." The little boy was thinking, okay, I need to keep my eyes out for that. But then she said, "You know, though, there is another way to get there." And she stood up. And she stepped away from her chair and she said to her grandson, "Sit in my favorite chair." He wasn't sure what was going on. He'd never been allowed to sit in her chair before. But he got up, he looked at her and said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yes, I think it's about time that you went to this amazing place." And so, not really understanding, he sat down on his grandma's favorite chair. And though nothing really happened right away, he knew right away this was a magic chair. He never understood. Every time he'd go into that room, every time he'd be near that chair, he could always feel something, but he never knew what it was. Now, he knew this chair was magic, and somehow he knew that he was about to go someplace amazing. And she looked at him and said, "I'll see you when you get back. Close your eyes and think about going to the Magic Water Park." And so, as he was sitting in the chair, he closed his eyes and thought about magic. And then all of a sudden, he opened his eyes and found that he was sliding down a tunnel. A dark tunnel full of water, wearing a pair of swimming trunks. He was sliding down the tunnel. He was looking around and realized, oh my gosh, my grandma was telling the truth. And then the tunnel suddenly plopped into a bigger tunnel, and then into the biggest tunnel of all, and there were kids all around him, and he slid down this humongous water slide, and suddenly he saw, at the end, a light, and he splashed down into a big swimming pool, and he came up out of the water, and looked up at the sky, and looked around, and saw that he was there. He had arrived at the Magic Water Parks, and it was bigger and more amazing than he could ever have imagined. He got out, started to look around, and he opened up his palm, and he looked at the ball that his grandma had given him. And he went up to a lifeguard and said, "Hey, is there somewhere where you can ride tigers around here?" And he said, "Oh yeah, right down there." And he pointed. And the boy took off running, because of course in the Magic Water Parks you can run all you want and it'll never fall. Running off, and he couldn't wait to find all the amazing things and be able to go back and tell his grandma everything he had done. The end.